right? So, or whose laws are being instated. You can go switch from French law to British law, depending upon where you're going. And, or sometimes you may have like different countries that took different ideas from different places around the world. But that's also an issue because nothing like this is, so it really has to be us either as a community in the diaspora coming together and saying like, hey, this can't happen anymore, and we find ways of protesting in a sense that is actually going to make an impact, like boycotting in the economic sense, where we can really hit for them to listen to what our voices are as a community. So that may look drastic. It may look like us like taking a stance against using, technology, so the child mining and child labor that happens can stop. Or it may look like us like continuously I don't know, like it could look like a myriad of different things, like addressing the mining companies that's happening by divesting in gold. I don't like it, but that also impacts the country. So there's different things that we have to look at as a community as to how do we address neo-colonialism and globalization for us to have sustainability within our communities. And as it stands, that's not happening because we're basing that off of systems that are still in place by previous oppressors. So I hope for it to stand. A lot of people thought that the African Union would be something of the sort, but since the creator of that, was basically assassinated, I would say, that hasn't happened either. So I really think that the only option is for the people to stand together in different sense, and the part of that goes back to storytelling again.
All right. Talking of storytelling, the people need to know what has happened today. I want to go back again to the short story that I've written in 2015. In that we need to see ourselves, all of us, as having a role to play. Now, the storyteller in the book, his role was just to tell story. Okay, it happened that he also had another role. He was the eldest in the village, therefore he was the village head. But that is a different role. The role of telling the story is a vital one,
Mm.
particularly looking at today in a globalized village. There is a lot of noise out there, but are we coordinating the narration we want to be there? I know that when you are telling the story from your point of view as African, okay, I want to clarify also another thing, that within the European context, within the Western consciousness, for the fact that you are an African, just for the fact that you are existing as an African, you are already a suspect. I think many Africans need to understand that if nobody is targeting you, it's because you are irrelevant. If you are relevant at all as an African, as a person of African descent, you are a suspect. You need to put that one at the back of your mind and then do what you have to do, which is tell the story, be a voice, be a light, be the candle, shine, don't die. Don't die because they are not going to approve you. Because if you go to YouTube and put certain messages that might sound like you are not in the mainstream, it is true that sometimes you can be blocked. It is true that maybe on Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever you might be blocked because you are not reflecting the mainstream message. But again, whose story are we telling? Why do we need to tell that story that way? If we want something to change, we're not going to be repeating the same pattern of thing because it means that we are crazy. The only way the thing is going to change is if each and every one of us can stand from the little angle that we are and begin to broadcast. Broadcast the light that you see. Broadcast the truth that you know. Remember that all of us are little antenna. The signal that comes to you, transmit it, the little one that you know. Bearing in mind this important truth that if you are an African diaspora, you are a person of African descent, whether you are in Africa or outside, if you are of substance, you are a suspect. Put it at the
Mm.
back of your mind, but do what you have to do for the interest of who you represent?
I think it's an important case to consider it, and I would say that a lot of people do know. A lot of people know that, and that's why they try to align themselves as much with their white counterparts, right? So I think that it's really important to realize that um, even if it's not said verbally, like out the front, like you don't have it being said overtly. Like a lot of people talk about covert and overt racism. Just because it's not overt doesn't mean they don't see you as a suspect, or the racism doesn't exist or isn't there, or whatever the case may be. So it's definitely something we have to consider, and not only consider but be cautious of, and to teach our children about.
All right. Now, how could we, what is your recommendation? How could we use storytelling to change the narration? Because again, I think storytelling is powerful. Anyway, for those who didn't understand what I was saying before, storytelling can basically make the person that is sitting next to you take a gun and shoot you. You could just harm the person because of story. That is how we function as human beings. Story is powerful. You know, at one point in Nigeria, story history was removed from our educational system. Our story, our history, the history we are taught in Nigeria is already highly infiltrated or actually moderated to accommodate Western idea, not the African idea. But even despite that, for a number of years, history was removed from school. But how
Mm.
could a government do a thing like that to a people? I don't know of
Mm.
any progressive country in the world where they don't teach their history. How can we use story to change the narration, at least for our own interest, from our own point of view? What would you recommend as a kind of strategies?
I think the biggest thing is making sure that people know how important their story is, and to encourage people you meet to share their stories. I know personally, it doesn't even matter who I meet. It could be from people from all walks of life. Um, when I get to hear their stories, I immediately tell them, you need to write that. You need to publish that. You need to write a book. You need to tell people that story, because I find people's stories really, really fascinating. And I want to say there was a point in time where a lot of people knew how fascinating storytelling was. And so you did have a lot of philosophers and a lot of people who were encouraged to write. So I think that's the first thing. And for people who don't like to write, there's other means of telling your story. So think about other mediums you can use to have your story be told. Think about creating a community around that, or creating a community in general, even if it's local, if it's digital, online, like just different things of creating an environment where not only you can tell your story, but you can absorb other people's stories, because that in itself can also inspire you in different ways, or things that you can learn from that. And the final thing is, think about how you can be able to obtain stories or reach stories that is far from you. That, like, being able to listen to stories that may come from India, may come from Kyrgyzstan, or may come from Namibia, or come from I don't know, Peru, like different places around the world. Like, be encouraged to not only listen to other people's stories from those places, but being able to get your audience there as well, as far as like sharing your stories there too. So think big when you're thinking about your narratives, and think how you're able to use your story in the economic sense, because it is possible. The only thing that's not possible is what we say isn't possible to ourselves. And in that, I'm saying that we are the only ones that can limit ourselves. There's nothing else now but us, especially in this new age. So thank you so much for having me be able to have this exciting topic with you. And I hope the listeners were super engaged and loved the talk and are inspired to share the story immediately.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Now, what relevance does story has to the project that you are running? Because you did make mention of two, the more project and also the project that you have in Ghana. Is there any way storytelling can be relevant to them? What do you have to say about that?
Absolutely. So the United Association of Moors, I founded in 2019, and we have been utilizing storytelling in a lot of different ways. We founded the company based off understanding that there are biased algorithms that exist online, specifically tailored to ethnic communities and or minorities in certain places. And so we aim to be a center where we could capture as much information within the diaspora so people could come and learn about um, their history and differences, different African businesses that may exist, different things.